Picking up from where I left off in the last episode, I'd mentioned that I was looking for a venue to spend my summers, and that venue was set to be Wyreside Lakes. Situated in beautiful surroundings at the foot of the Bowland Fells, its gin-clear, weedy waters held some incredible carp and fish well during the warmer months. It would consequently be where I would spend the next 3 years in search of one carp in particular, McQueen. It was a prehistoric looking creature and one that I dearly wanted in the album. My first session on Bantons Lake was to be in the August of 2016. I knew very little about the lake other than it being exceptionally weedy, and I really wasn't expecting to open my account so quickly. But after seeing a fish stick its head out in a small bay to the left of a swim known as Fence, I got a rod on it quickly, and I was rewarded almost instantly. An ancient looking jet black mirror began my campaign in fine style. With some low pressure forecast for the following 24 hours, I proceeded to find a clear area in amongst a dense weed and get the rods out for the night ahead before the rain set in. The next bite came the following morning when another incredible chestnut mirror rolled over the net cord. With a stock of fish like this, I knew I was going to enjoy my time on here. With no other action for the following 24 hours and the weather clearing, I awoke on the final morning to a perfect summer's dawn. With the mist dancing on the surface of the lake, I sat, coffee in hand, watching as a couple of fish rolled over the spot. With time ebbing away until my time was up, I reluctantly packed away, already planning my return. I didn't have too long to wait, as my next session came just 2 weeks later. After walking the lake for signs of fish, I found a good number stacked up in front of a swim called Luna. With nobody else on that entire side of the lake, it also gave me plenty of options. As one of the shallower areas of the lake, there's an abundance of weed present, which made finding a spot tricky. But after a good hour or so of thrashing the water to a foam, I was happy with the 3 different spots that I'd found. After creating so much commotion, I was convinced I'd almost have certainly ruined my chances for that day, so I was taken completely by surprise when my right-hand rod went into meltdown and I scooped up the first fish of the session, another awesome dark mirror. This kind of set the tone for the rest of the session, and little did I know I was in for one crazy 48 hours. Just moments after recasting the right-hand rod, I lost a very good fish right at the net, and while still wrapping that same rod back up, in disbelief, I was away again with another simply incredible mirror. Thankfully, the next few hours remained quiet, which gave me a chance to get myself settled in before slipping the net on another awesome, wrinkly old mirror later that evening. My middle rod was positioned on a slightly deeper, silty area, which I thought may produce a bite during the night and early hours before the sun warmed up the shallower bars. My suspicions were confirmed as by morning that spot had produced another 2 fish, taking my tally to 5. Every battle was exhausting and hard won. With the abundance of weed present, it meant that every fight was a game of cat and mouse, with every fish moving from weed bed to weed bed, which more often than not ended up with me having to place the rod back on the rest until the fish freed itself. With the soaring temperatures really taking its toll, I spent much of the following day with my rods out the water, resting in the shade and trying to get rid of a pounding headache. After one last fish, it was almost as if someone had flipped a switch. Despite there still being plenty of fish in the area, the action simply stopped and I packed up early the following morning before the heat of the day really set in. That actually turned out to be my last session on Bantons that summer, as I returned to Blakemere for the winter months in pursuit of my other targets. With almost a full 12 months passing by, I was excited to get back down to Bantons in the June of 2017. As always seems to be the case on weedy lakes, some spots come and go each year dependent on the weed growth, and after a quick lead around in Luna, I decided to target a similar area but from the swim next door. It gave me better line lay towards the spot and would hopefully mean that I wouldn't have as much trouble landing anything that I hooked. The fish seemed very moody that session, content with just laying up in amongst the dense weed and not really seeming interested. My one and only chance came in the dying hours of the session when the right hand was ripped from the rest before the fish found sanctuary in the weed and threw the hook. After a manic couple of months, it wasn't until the middle of August that I made my return. With some lower pressure forecast and nothing much to go off, I opted to fish a slightly deeper area of the lake known as Dry Peg. It still gave me the option to fish towards the shallower margins of the island, but also some of the deeper water should they choose to drop down and feed. The first 24 hours were very quiet indeed, and after seeing nothing at all, a couple of fish began to show in the peg to my right. I made the move immediately. I found a couple of spots on the end of a huge weed bed and was rewarded pretty quickly with a lovely chestnut coloured mirror, followed shortly after by a mid-20 right in the middle of a torrential downpour. I was soaked to the skin, but I couldn't care less. The move had paid off, and that was all that mattered. After reeling in the other rod and retreating to the car to dry off, the remainder of the session was uneventful, and it would once again be another 12 months before I was back down in search of my target. June 2018, I made my return and once again dropped into Luna for 48 hours. The session started badly, suffering a cut-off on top of a bar in the early hours of the first morning. Bantons can be a really frustrating lake at times, and I was hoping it didn't turn out to be one of those sessions where everything just seemed to go wrong. Fortunately, however, my luck turned with the arrival of another jet black mirror, followed shortly by another that had weeded me up, which turned out to be a lovely orange coloured mid-20. A few weeks later I was back, this time to be joined by Alex Grice to shoot a magazine featured on fishing weedy lakes, a description which Bantons fitted perfectly. I'd arrived the night before to get myself settled in and hopefully everyone waiting to have its photo taken when Alex arrived early the following morning. Setting up in Rowlands, a quick leather round revealed that the spots I'd fished the previous year were still fishable and weed free, and so in double quick time I had 2 rods fishing. For the third, I blasted the marker towards the island and actually bumped the fish on the way down before landing with a firm donk, so that was the third rod sorted. I was almost certain that rod would produce a fish during the night, and I wasn't mistaken. After slipping a net under one of the lake's old characters, the island rod produced one of the lake's 18, a lovely half linear known as Sally at 28 on the nose. Typically, the bobbins remained motionless for the duration of Alex's stay, and with the feature now wrapped up and some heavy rain moving in on the horizon, Alex made his departure, but not before I showed him a picture of McQueen I had saved on my phone and said, "That's the one I'm after." With fish moving over the spot, something just didn't feel right. I felt like I should have had a bite, so I decided to quickly recast all 3 rods before the rain set in. And then, as though it was scripted, just an hour or so later, the last rod that I'd recast was away. It was McQueen.